the Akai MPC Live II versus the MPC One. Which one should you get? In this video, I'll cover what I think are the most important considerations, and that includes a big feature from a recent update that doesn't actually work for everybody. Let's start with price. The MPC One was first released in February 2020, and the MPC Live II was released a few months later. At the time of this filming, in July 2022, getting a new MPC One will cost you $899 USD. A new Live II is going to run you $1299 US. The retail price for both has actually increased since their initial release due to how popular they've been. Of course, you can still get them used on sites like Reverb for much less. Clearly, the form factor is one of the most distinguishing features. The MPC One is about 11 inches square, while the MPC Live II is about 16 by 10. And here they are with the dig attack to give you a sense of scale. The One weighs in at almost 5 pounds, while the Live is 7.5. The Live is not light. That weight difference is primarily due to the speaker and the battery, which it has, but the One does not. When I first got the Live II, I thought that the speaker was kind of a silly addition. If I hoped to produce proper beats on this thing, I would use my studio monitors or headphones. But I actually use it a lot as a quick sound check, or if I'm playing something I made for my wife, or we even take it on trips now instead of a Bluetooth speaker. The battery on the Live II is really handy as well. I love being able to get something going in the studio, unplug everything, and then keep working on it in the living room. Akai says the battery should last up to 6 hours. Well, I just timed mine with the speaker off, the brightness down, and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off, and it lasted about 4 hours. We have two completely different layouts here. With the MPC One, it's more vertical. The screen is above the pads and buttons, and with the Live II, the pads are to the left of the screen, and the buttons are split into these two sections. The pads are bigger on the Live, so if finger drumming is a priority for you, then you may opt for the Live II. For me, I can get by just fine with the smaller ones, and in terms of responsiveness, I find them indistinguishable when on identical sensitivity settings. In fact, I spend more time using the pads as additional buttons, such as selecting tracks or muting them. So I actually prefer the smaller pads since I can reach them all with a single hand. On the Live, because of the orientation, I tend to use the screen more for those functions, which isn't as nice because it lacks that tactile feedback. The buttons on the Live II are rubberized, whereas they're hard plastic on the MPC One. Which is preferable is a matter of taste. I like them equally. What does make a difference is that the labels are printed on most of the Live buttons and they're backlit, so you can read them in low light. While the One has mostly backlit buttons, the labels are printed on the case. They become invisible in low light, so you definitely need some lighting until you memorize their functions. Now the most critical difference, for me at least. The MPC One has 31 buttons in total, while the Live has 27. While 4 buttons may not seem like a big difference, realize each button has a secondary function on it. So really, it's a difference of 8 functions you have faster access to on the MPC One. Those 4 additional buttons give you direct access to Browse, Program Edit, the Sampler, and Sample Edit. Those are things I use all the time and appreciate having quick access to. On the Live II, to access those things, I have to do some finger gymnastics with a button plus pad or button plus screen combo to access those things, which slows me down. Also, on the One, all of the primary buttons are easily accessible under your right hand, spread out nicely around the big knob. I find this layout more conducive to developing muscle memory. The last thing to mention about the top panel is the screen. While they're the same size on each device, the screen on the One is a little further away from you, just over an inch. This means you have to reach a little further to interact with it, and it could be slightly harder to see, depending on which way your vision goes. This is most noticeable when flat on a table, but the more you angle it toward yourself, the less of an issue this is. Also, with my devices at least, the screen on the MPC One is ever so slightly dimmer than on the Live. Both of these have 2/4 inch inputs, but the Live has 2 phono inputs as well, which is absolutely convenient if you plan to record straight from a turntable. The Live has 6 outs versus only 2 on the MPC One. That's only a big deal if you plan to externally process your tracks differently. For me, it's mattered because I do like to set up a stereo send and return using 2 ins and 2 outs. I can't do that on the MPC One and still have a main out. With the MPC 2.10 update, this was supposed to be less of an issue. Now you can, in theory, plug a class-compliant USB audio interface into either device and expand the available ins and outs. In practice though, many audio interfaces, including mine, face frequent pops, nullifying the usefulness of this feature. Users have been reporting on which seem to work and which don't in the MPC forums. I'll put a link to that thread in the description. By the way, if you're finding this video helpful, I really appreciate if you can click that like button. Thank you. A few other noteworthy differences. The Live has a 16 GB hard drive versus 4 on the One, but Akai fills them both up with extra content and you end up with only a few gigabytes left on each. So with either device, I would strongly suggest that you do not save your files on the internal hard drive. It fills up fast and you cannot easily take things off that drive. You can add a solid state hard drive to the Live, but not the One. And by the way, pro tip, if you are adding a drive to the One, I'd suggest Velcroing it to the lid as I've done here. Otherwise it can move around a little inside that compartment. Given how big SD cards are now, I don't miss the extra drive on the One. And the ability to just pop out the SD card is so convenient. For example, if you're moving samples back and forth from a recorder or your laptop, the Live II has Wi-Fi and the One does not. The Wi-Fi can be really convenient for downloading samples from your Splice account. I use that all the time. You can do this on the One, but you just have to connect an Ethernet cable. The Live II has Bluetooth and the One does not. Note that the Bluetooth only works with Bluetooth-capable MIDI controllers. You can't, for example, use Bluetooth headphones. Also, you get latency into the tens of milliseconds over Bluetooth sometimes, which is definitely noticeable. So given all of that, how do you decide? The Live II can definitely look sexy on paper with the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, USB 3. But if you're going to use the device in the same spot with everything plugged in all the time and keep it there, I'd recommend going with the MPC One. The better layout and extra buttons easily tip the scales. If you see yourself moving around more, using the device in different settings, like in your lap, on the couch, then perhaps the Live II is better for you. Also, if you're serious about finger drumming, or you highly value the convenience of sampling directly from a turntable, or perhaps you relish this idea of a fully wireless music production system that lasts for 4 hours, then maybe the Live II is for you. And if you can't decide, you can always do what I did and get both. I'd highly recommend you check this video out next, where I go through the features I like most and least in the Live II in the context of a DAW-less setup. You can also click subscribe to stay connected, and may the groove be with you.